All right. Thank you, everybody. Good morning and welcome to EID's May 13th, 2024 board meeting. May I have roll call, please?
Directors Day, Veerkamp, and Anzini present. Directors Osborne and Dwyer absent. General Manager Abercrombie, Senior Deputy General Counsel Leeper, and Clerk to the Board Sullivan present. General Counsel Polson absent.
All right, thank you. And before we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, after the Pledge of Allegiance, please join me in a moment of silence. I think it's really cool tribute to, we just lost one of our own, Michael Rafferty, in his chair there. That's very nice. And we'll honor him during our moment of silence. It'll be dedicated to Michael Rafferty. Michael was not only a dedicated board member, but also had a deep interest in the district and its ratepayers for more than 2 decades as a editor and reporter for the Mountain Democrat. He'll always be remembered for his lasting impact and unwavering dedication to the community of El Dorado County. Please rise and join me in a Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for Michael. And if my fellow board members concur, Jim, could we possibly send a letter to the family along those lines? I think to recognize and thank Michael for all that he did for us. All right, do I hear a motion to adopt today's agenda?
I'll move.
Second.
All right, is there any public comment on the adoption of today's agenda?
If members of the public would like to address the board on the adoption of today's agenda, please refer to the detailed instructions on page 2 of the agenda. President Day does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak.
Thank you. Jim, any employee recognition?
Please vote.
Oh, sorry.
Please vote on
Clock
today's
is ticking
agenda.
here. Please vote on the adoption of today's agenda.
Even you, yeah, there you go. Division 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
All right, now, Jim, any employee recognition?
None this morning.
Okay. Is there any public comment on an item not on today's agenda that's EID related?
If members of the public would like to address the board, please refer to the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day does not appear there are any members of the public wishing to speak.
Thank you. Jim, any reports?
Just a brief one. Attended the Aqua Conference last Wednesday and Thursday. Sessions were good. Dinner was better, but had an interesting conference. Some real good legislation coming out on Prop 218 processing. Elizabeth Leeper was there at the same session, and I think it's going to help all the water districts process the 218 a little more efficiently. That concludes my report.
All right. Board members?
Lori?
Yes, Lori?
Yes, I had the opportunity to also attend the Aqua Conference on Tuesday and Wednesday. Other than the wind, we were all fine inside the different places that we attended, and that would be in the Sheraton, the Convention Center. I had opportunity to go into several of the workshops. It's always refreshing to talk to other water district and employees from other water companies. I do want to say that at several of the workshops, I saw some of our staff there as part of the presentation, and they were good in representing El Dorado Irrigation District. I appreciate their efforts in staying true as a representative. A couple of the more interesting workshops. One was the integrity of cybersecurity. And to me, if anybody knows me, this is very, very an area of field that I want to make sure that our agency stays on top of, simply because of some of the efforts of other public agencies being hacked by either Russian or inside criminals who are just wanting to extort money from agencies and lock up all of their data. And it was good to see one of our staff members, Aaron, was there, and he was definitely involved in getting as much information as he could. The other opportunities were talking about water transfers throughout the state of California. And this kind of year and last year has enabled us to be able to look at opportunities for us to work with other agencies. And that's all I have to report. One thing is the Mountain County Water Agencies are getting ready to meet again in June. It'll be, I think, in Sutter Creek. So anybody who wants to attend, let me know. And I'm intending to be there, and my wings are free now. I can fly. Thanks.
Brian?
Yeah, on Friday, I attended the Sacramento Chamber host breakfast where the governor spoke for about a half an hour. It was in conjunction, I believe, with Aqua, but they didn't really highlight Aqua during the time. There was some people there from Aqua, so it was interesting. And obviously, the governor's major issues are budget, which there was a lot of smoke and mirrors presented in his discussion. But he did talk about climate change, resiliency, and so forth. So it'll be interesting to see how he continues on that climate change rant without any money. So we'll see how that goes. Also, then I attended the water agency meeting Friday. Actually, the host breakfast was Thursday morning of Aqua. The water agency meeting on Friday in Director Dwyer's place, and where the preliminary budget was presented. Director Dwyer and I had talked about the preliminary budget and some of the projects and the cost of the projects, and some questions were asked around the major expenses for those. There was also a legislative update from Mark Smith where 218 was talked about. That does sound like a very good thing for all of our utilities and so forth on the figuring of that. And then next Wednesday is LAFCO, and we'll be talking about, we lost Erica Sanchez, who's been with LAFCO 15 years. She went to Placer County, LAFCO. Unfortunately for us, it's going to be a real hard person to replace. And in the 2024-25 work plan also will be discussed. That's it for me.
Thank you. And we'll move on to approval of the consent calendar. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move approval.
I'll second it.
All right, is there any public comment on today's consent calendar?
If members of the public would like to address the board on the approval of the consent calendar, please refer to page 2 of today's agenda for instructions. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on the approval of the consent calendar. I believe we're ready for the vote.
Please vote.
Division 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
All right, we'll move to action item 7, our general warrant registers. We have to pay our bills.
I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, and is there any public comment on item 7?
If members of the public would like to address the board on action item number 7, option 1, moved by Director Anzini and seconded by Director Veerkamp, please refer to today's agenda for instructions. Present day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on action item number 7. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Division 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
All right, I know it's been a tough grind to get through today's agenda, but we have to move to the last item, item 8.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Alrighty. Good morning, members of the board. My name is Liz Carrington, Senior Civil Engineer here with the district. Today I'll be presenting a construction contract and project funding for the Flume 47A replacement project. Next slide. Previous board actions. In June of 2021, the board awarded a design contract to GHD and authorized additional funding for capitalized labor and environmental studies. And then in October of last year, the board adopted the current capital improvement plan subject to available funding. Next slide. Summary of issues. Flume 47A is a component of the district's Project 184 water conveyance system and delivers about 1/3 of the district's water supply to our customers. This wooden flume is located on top of a former landslide, and a 2020 condition assessment described the timbers as undersized, overstressed, and the flume in need of replacement. Next slide. Background. Flume 47A was ranked an 8 out of 10, 10 being the worst, on this latest flume condition assessment. We do have a couple of other flumes that ranked a higher and worse condition. That's Flume 45, Section 3, and Flume 48. These, however, are much larger construction projects and will take a significant amount of construction funds to reconstruct.
Bless you.
Currently, the construction is deferred on our capital improvement plan. Staff is progressing the design, though, so those projects will be shovel-ready in case funding becomes available or we need to replace those in short order. At this time, staff is proceeding with Flume 47A due to the pay-as-you-go funding availability and the need to continue our programmatic replacement of Project 184 assets. Next slide. Background, Flume 47A is south of Highway 50 near Pacific House. It's about 2 miles off of the Hazel Valley Road exit. Next slide. This flume is about 180 feet in length and was last replaced in the 1990s by PG&E. The timber sills, which are the wooden components that rest right on top of the bare earth, they're subject to continual moisture and are degrading pretty significantly at this point. All of the timbers are undersized and showing signs of distress. The uphill slope is near vertical and is prone to rockfall and tree fall. Thus is shown by the previous landslide that we've had in that area. And also the access road is unreliable in inclement weather. It's now time to replace this asset. Next slide. On the left, we have a picture of Flume 47A looking downstream. And then on the right, we have those timbers as well as the sills that are degrading and subject to regular moisture. Next slide. On the left, we have that uphill vertical slope. We have encounters significant rockfall and tree fall on a very regular basis, and so it causes operational concerns, and we'll need to replace those often and so forth. And so part of the project is to remedy that uphill slope condition. And then a picture on the right is the access road. That picture was taken in the summertime during great weather. Unfortunately, it's not travelable as easily during inclement weather. Next slide. For this project, the scope of work is to first and foremost improve those access roads so we can facilitate construction and long-term canal maintenance during inclement weather. Also, we'll be stabilizing the slope uphill and downhill. We'll be removing rock and tree. We'll be doing a significant amount of grading, and we'll be installing a drainage system so that we can wick that water off of the uphill slope and reduce the risk of future landslides. We'll also be constructing a bench on the hillside with an MSC wall and a leveling pad for the canal. And we'll be reconstructing the wooden flume with a reinforced concrete rectangular flume. Next slide. So we've gotten to that point with flume replacements where our designs are pretty straightforward. We know what works for us. We know what's great for our operational needs. So these are pictures of Flume 3840 that was reconstructed several years ago. On the left is a bird's eye view of that access road with the truck, so depict the functionality of this project. And then also on the right, we have the uphill slope. This also was subject to a significant amount of grading due to rockfall. Next slide. Staff released 2 RFQs, one in December of last year and one in January, to garner as much interest as possible. With the projects being what they are, only 2 contractors qualified for the project. Bids were due in April of this year, and the engineer's estimate was $2.4 million. KW Emerson came in at about 2.8, close to 2.9 million. Their bid was the lowest responsive and responsible bid. Therefore, staff is recommending award to KW Emerson for this project. Staff is seeking board approval of 2 additional contracts. One is for construction engineering services. GHD is the engineer of record, and so typically staff will continue our relationship through construction for submittal review, RFI responses, design clarifications, as well as that final construction report as required by FERC. Also construction inspection. So we'll be inspecting this with in-house staff during normal business hours, but occasionally with the flumes, we do have that possibility of swing shift, night work, and weekend work. And so staff solicited an RFP for additional supplemental inspection work if the need arises. And then ICM Group was the lowest proposal received, qualified staff, and so staff is recommending award a contract to ICM Group as well. Overall schedule, we'll be probably beginning road work around fall of this year, late summer, fall. The canal work will occur during the outage between October 3rd and December 13th. We intend to have substantial completion and the canal back in service by mid-December of this year. And we'll most likely need to come back during the spring to finish out that road work. Next slide. Staff filed a notice of exemption from CEQA. This project qualifies for a Class 1 and a Class 2 exemption. Next slide. Funding. Alrighty, so we have quite a list here. So KW Emerson is about 2.8, 2.9 million. We're also seeking funding for construction engineering services, inspection, specialty QSIP inspection as required by FERC, environmental services, capitalized labor, and contingency for a total funding request of $3,879,085. This project was identified in the CIP as for construction of this year. We have about 3.2 million that was included in the CIP, and this funding source is about 53% water rates and 53% water FCCs and 47% water rates. Next slide. Option 1, award contracts to KW Emerson in the not to exceed amount of $2,884,700 for construction. GHD Inc. in the not to exceed amount of $213,426 for construction engineering services. ICM Group in the not to exceed amount of $137,200 for general inspection services for the Flume 47A replacement project. And authorize additional funding of $66,115 for specialty inspection services. $20,000 for environmental services, $205,000 for capitalized labor, and $352,644 for contingencies, for total funding request of $3,879,085 for the Flume 47A replacement project. Alrighty, recommendation option 1. Any questions or comments?
All right, any questions?
I do have a question on the construction schedule.
Yes.
Is that more closely tied to when we want to dewater the canal and so forth?
Yes.
Okay. My only concern is, and I get that, if we run into the inclement weather, we're starting to get to that degree if it starts early. And then, as we are seeing now, I'm sorry, Jen, the change order for Zibin and Reed, of course, that's higher elevation that we got to pay to remobilize. And so I'm just concerned about that, especially with it being 47% water rates. So just question, and maybe we just bird dog and make sure, hopefully they can get it done
Yeah, luckily
for
it's
the schedule.
Yeah, luckily it's a smaller flume. Access road is already carved in the hillside. We're just improving the access road. And so there was a lot of construction during bidding of, do we need to do the access road now or later? And we just reiterated to them that canal work is the first and foremost. Let's get that done, and then we can come back later for the access road. So far the feedback is they're very confident. They can
And it
get
is
that done.
lower elevation, I understand that. But gotcha, okay.
Do I hear a motion, or do you have a question?
I'll move approval of option 1.
Second.
All right, is there any public comment on item number 8?
If members of the public would like to address the board on action item number 8, option 1 moved by Director Anzini and seconded by Director Veerkamp, please refer to the instructions on page 2 of today's agenda. President Day, it does not appear any members of the public are wishing to speak on action item number 8. I believe we're ready for the vote.
All right, please vote.
Division 3, 4, and 5, voting aye, motion carries.
All right, thank you, and that concludes our agenda. I don't think we have any assignments today.
The only review of assignment is the letter to Michael Rafferty's family.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And so adjourn today's meeting at 9:22. Please enter that in the record book.
And also, if the board members could be sure to review the tentatively scheduled items for future meetings and reach out if you have any questions. And then, as a reminder, we do plan on having a tour at the water treatment plant after June 10th meeting, so please dress appropriately. Thank you.